Shelf-ready services aims to take materials that a library has acquired, purchased, has donated, whatever, and process them to the point that once the library actually gets them in-house, they don't have to do anything else to them to make them accessible. They can literally take them out of the box, put them right at a shelf, and then their patrons, their community can find them, access them, and use them right away. For a long time, Backstage has offered shelf-ready services as part of its cataloging service. We've been cataloging for decades now, I would say, and it was very natural for us to, while we were cataloging materials, it began with why not put a barcode on an item or put a call number on the item, and it kind of grew from there. Eventually, we became a sort of boutique shelf-ready service where libraries knew that we weren't just going to give them the standard, this is what you get, deal with it. We will customize it, give you label size options, and we'll customize your call numbers, and we'll complete shelf listing to make sure there's no overlap, and so it sort of grew from there. It depends a little bit on who the publisher is, who the vendor is, who you're working with. Different vendors have different preferences. But our workflow is flexible in that we can work with whatever makes the most sense for the library and for the vendor. Now, typically what happens is the library will establish a relationship with the vendor for ordering materials, whether that be a standing order, one-time order, an approval plan, what have you. And then they establish a relationship with Backstage and say, okay, we want you to catalog and physically process the materials from this vendor. Once all of that's in place, then the vendor will ship the materials directly to one of our offices. And once it gets to one of those offices, we go ahead and process those materials. And then once they're finished, we ship them directly to the library, ready to go on the shelves. We work with a range of publishers. Specifically, we have a partnership right now with Ingram Library Services to do customized boutique shelf-ready services for their customers. But we've also historically worked with overseas vendors such as Harasowicz or JPT, Susan Bach, Theodore Front, the LCCAP program that collects world language materials and sends it to the nation. We also do shelf-ready processing for libraries for vendors that they purchase from that we don't actually have a professional relationship with, but all they do is tell the vendor, ship them to this address, and we take it from there. There are definitely different levels of shelf-ready processing. In our relationship with Ingram Library Services, the way that it works is they actually have a repository of MARC records for all of their titles. And so that makes the shelf-ready process a bit quicker because they ship us the orders, and when they ship us the orders for libraries, they also give us a MARC file with all of the MARC records for that specific library. And so when it gets to us, all we have to do is add item level data, holdings data, do whatever updates to the MARC records they need, do the physical processing, and we can get it out the door. Right now, we are hovering around a 5 to 6 business day turnaround time for our Ingram customers, and that's our quickest. Now, on the flip side, if we are doing full level cataloging, especially if it's original cataloging for some of these more, I don't want to say unique languages, but non-Roman languages, languages that require more specialized expertise, those can take a little longer. Right now, our turnaround time for the more difficult languages of a shelf-ready client is about 3 to 4 weeks for full cataloging from the day we get it in the door to when we ship it out to the library. Orders go into our queue, and they're queued up as they are ordered, as they come from the vendor to say, hey, you have an order coming. So this one's first, this one's second, this one's third. We do have the ability with some of our vendors, Ingram is one of them, where they can let us know that the customer needs this expedited, either because the customer really needs it quickly or because the vendor knows that there's a street date that needs to be met, and so they have the ability to mark it as an expedited. And so what that do is that brings it up on the queue to the top, so we know as soon as it gets in, it's a priority for that customer. In terms of cataloging most of local processes, the biggest one is the item level record. And that field usually includes things such as what the branch it belongs to, what call number is on it, what barcode is on it. So it really ties the physical book to the MARC record. Beyond that, some libraries like to have sort of local subject headings. Maybe they have their own list of local headings that they use, or maybe they have a more unique list like BISAC or Homosaurus or something like that. And then beyond that, a lot of it is actually just stripping things away. You know, these baseline records sometimes have a lot of information because they are created for anyone. And so maybe, for example, a big one is fast headings. Customers may say, well, I don't need those headings. They just kind of take up space, take up room. They may confuse our patrons with all these different subjects. Some have overlap, you know, so take those out. When it comes to physical processing, the biggest thing is call numbers. A lot of libraries have really unique setups to what makes sense for their library, because the standard Dewey or the standard Library of Congress may not make sense for their library or their patrons. So they may, for example, just have a fiction section by author, or they may separate out romance materials, or a lot of public libraries separate out biographies, and single subject biographies are separated out, and they have sort of unique homemade ways of how they structure those call numbers. And so that's the biggest customization. Manga, graphic novels, sometimes, because it's traditional, especially with manga, it'll read what we call back to front. Some libraries want barcodes, for example, to be on the true front, even if the material is back to front, and others want it to be on, you know, what we would consider the true front in a typical book. So, you know, that's one of those little niche areas that just really goes into the level of consideration for shelf ready. So we process basically anything that a library will purchase. Obviously, the majority of them are books. You know, that's what libraries purchase the most of, these, as always. But we process serials, audiovisual materials like DVDs, CDs. We have also been processing maps. We do a ton of music scores, actually. We are a vendor that has the largest list in the nation of world languages that we can catalog in. Just shy of 130 different languages and scripts, ranging from English through your Romance languages like Spanish, Portuguese, all the way up to the more esoteric languages like Classical Mongolian or Ottoman Turkish, and everything in between. I am very passionate about education and about sharing information. I think what makes a community the strongest is having an educated and a knowledgeable community. And I feel very strongly that libraries play a central role in that. We have all these different services that serve libraries in different ways that I've actually been able to tap into to help even support our shelf-ready customers. We have our automated services group, which specializes in authority control. And so we've actually been able to create a custom script so that when we are receiving MARC records from various vendors or what have you, she can normalize them. You know, we can just run it through that script and get it right to physical processing out the door, meet shelf date. Another example is our on-site team. So one of the ways we help support libraries specifically with their opening day collections is that our on-site team can actually go on location and do the shelving. I mean, you want to talk about shelf ready. This goes beyond shelf ready. It's not only shelf ready, it's actually shelved. It's patron ready at that point. And so just being able to work with and tap into all these really smart, experienced professionals we have at Backstage that know way more about subjects that I know nothing about. It's really benefited us as a team, but it's also really benefited our customers.